Hello, everyone. Have you heard one of these in the Great B12 debate? It's bacteria on unwashed fruit. Just stop washing your produce. Your body makes it in your gut. You don't need supplements. There are trace amounts in food. You'll be fine. It's a scam from the 1940s to sell supplements. You need to supplement or you'll get permanent brain damage. All B12 supplements are created equal. Just pick one. So, which one of these is true? Look, when you're hearing all these conflicting things, especially as a beginner like I was, it can get completely overwhelming. You don't know who to trust, you don't know what's safe, and honestly, that's exactly how I felt. And that's why I reached out to our guest today, Don Bennett, to do this interview. Because here's what Don and I both agree on: there's a middle ground, a nuanced perspective that no one's talking about. And if you're only hearing the first part of the sentence, and then people just cut off, they're not giving you the whole story in most cases. So I read an article by Don on his website, which we'll share that here, health101.org. And it totally was finally the information, the clearing up of everything. It explained to me why you hear all these different perspectives and really helped me put the pieces together to make the most informed decision for myself whether to take B12 or not, and also gave me the real information about what it is. So if you're not familiar with Don, let me go ahead and tell you who he is. Okay, so my guest today is Don Bennett. When he discovered the inconsistencies within the health field, such as doctors who smoked and nutritionists who ate foods that were known to be harmful, Don set out to learn the realities of health for himself. Seeing that traditional curriculums were filled with biases, hidden agendas, misinformation, and missing information, Don became self taught, avoiding the hurdles set up by academic tradition. He took a common sense approach to health and learned the value of looking past the conventional wisdoms. This approach allowed him to discover the realities of health. 50 years later, as a disease avoidance specialist, he now shares the wealth of enlightening and empowering knowledge with others for their consideration and benefit. And he's here today to share it with you. Don, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to get in this conversation because I think it's going to help so many people cut through the confusion.
Well, thanks for inviting me, JG. I'm happy to be here.
So the thing that I was talking about the article, I honestly didn't even know B12 existed. Like I didn't know what it was. I became vegan just kind of out of nowhere by seeing a video. And then about 4 months in, I started feeling like my arms were tingling and I was feeling some sensations on my limbs. And of course, what do we all do? We go to Google, and then it was Google. Now it would probably be one of these AI bots. But I went on there, and of course, one of the first things that came up, like, oh, you might be having neurological damage as soon as I put the word vegan in, right? So that took me looking it up, and then I saw the mainstream answer: hey, buy one of these supplements. All was well until 2023. I discovered the fruitarian community and the natural hygiene, and then they were like, that's a scam. No, you don't need it. You make it as long as you eat the fruits of our land, and so on. So then I was like, okay, I'm so confused, back and forth. I just really couldn't figure it out, and I kept looking into it because I'm like, there has to be a real answer. And then I found your page, your article, your Facebook group, and it's been so helpful. So thank you for being here, because I realize this could be very dangerous for people to be told these blanket statements, especially if someone does need it. And I realized there were little things that I wasn't hearing in the other types of responses, like you make it, but then your article shared how yes, you possibly could, but you would need this perfect environment and certain things block it. And these are things we all eat as raw vegans. And you've also shared why we can even get it in some of the processed foods. So, regular diets might be getting it and we may not. So I'm just excited to get into all of this. So welcome, and thank you for helping clear this all up for me.
You're welcome. What I've noticed over the years is that the truth is often located somewhere in the middle, and that people tend to be at one or the other end of a spectrum. Like, take exercise, for example. My observation has been that people are either doing way too little exercise or way too much. Once I began to understand what appropriate amounts of exercise were, and I'm like, wow. So once you look um, at these issues, at the nuances within these issues, and you realize that okay, why do people seem to be lining up and on one side of the spectrum or the other, and treating it as something that's binary. And that is very true with supplements. You have people either saying we don't need any as raw food vegans, as long as we're eating, uncooked raw vegan diet. And then you have other people spending $500 a month on supplements and taking a plate full of all kinds of pills. And again, the truth is often in the middle, and it is in this case also where when you look at like, well, not all the supplements are bad and not all supplements are good. It's called getting into the weeds, but it's good to get into the weeds on some things if health is your most important. If health is very, very important to you, and not just your health, but your future health is what I like to talk about.
And I love your approach because you really like take us back to the roots. Like, okay, let's look at how we were made, how we were designed, and then but let's translate that into our real world situation. And I think sometimes we forget, especially if we get deep into this lifestyle, that we're not living outside without clothes on, without shoes on, and eating fruits that have been grown right out in our own yard. We are eating things that are bought from the store, where things that are grown for profit. It's one of the things that I've learned. And also, like with the exercising thing, all or nothing isn't the approach to take. You can go too far. Even our own body shows us there's a balance. So I'm excited though to get into the B12. There's just been a lot of things going on lately that have raised my concerns, and I'm sure yours too. It seems like people are on these two sides, like we're arguing, like a political argument. Just start with, what is B12? People are saying it's a scam, but it is an actual real thing that we need, right?
It is an essential nutrient. I don't call it a vitamin only because it technically isn't. I know some people say vitamin B12, but it technically isn't a vitamin. It's vitamins. When you think of a vitamin, you think of something that's going to come from the foods that we eat. B12 is not meant to come from the foods that we eat. It's not produced by plant matter. It's produced by microorganisms and optimally produced by microorganisms in our own body. So it is an essential nutrient. Now, people who don't, it depends what a person's base thinking is. If their foundational thinking is that we don't need any supplements and, oh, what, B12 is a supplement? Well, then we don't need that either. Then they're going to try and either say, well, it comes from food. Oh, wait, it doesn't. Okay. Well, then we don't, it's not essential. But they'll jump through hoops. The human brain is very good at jumping through hoops to figure out what to think and what to say to support that which you want to believe.
Like a
And
confirmation bias,
right,
right?
exactly, exactly. So it is an essential nutrient. If we don't get enough of it from however we're supposed to be getting it, or from wherever we can get it, there is going to be trouble. And I don't use the word may. I don't say there may be trouble. There will be trouble because the empirical evidence is extremely clear on this, and it just happens to be backed up by science. But it's science that's conveniently overlooked by the people who don't want to believe that we need a B12 supplement. And they'll either say that B12 is not a real thing, or, well, it is, but, our bodies make all we need, or it is, but we'll get all we need from the fruits and vegetables, or it is, but it comes from the air. I've heard everything about this. When you don't want to believe you need a supplement, everything else just falls in place to support, again, that which you want to believe.
Now, let me ask you this. I've read your article, and where does cobalt come in to the whole thing?
Well, the B12 molecule is made around cobalt. That's why they call it cobalamin, the cobalamin molecule. So for your body to make it, and I'll get into this a little bit in my slide presentation, for your body to make it, you have to have enough dietary cobalt. Now, you can research this and you'll find some chatbots that say that is correct. Other chatbots say, no, that's not correct. Well, I want all your viewers and listeners to understand that everything I'm going to be talking about today, except where I say, in my opinion, which is very rare for me to say, by the way, everything I say is squarely in the realm of objective fact. It's squarely in the realm of science. It is not a matter of opinion, mine or anyone's. Okay, so um, whether we can, whether we need cobalamin or not, is not a matter of opinion. It's
Mhm.
not like, okay, well, on that one we'll just have to agree to disagree. No, no. If you want to know the truth about something and you care about your health, you're not going to leave it at, well, we're just going to agree to disagree, or I'll believe the person, I'll believe whichever person I resonate with. I like this person better than that person, so I'll believe what that person says. Well, that's not a good way to do it. I always tell people, and you know, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, um, to learn as a researcher, not as a student. Don't follow any one particular individual, because if the individual you're following, maybe because you like that person or that person's initial advice helped you overcome some kind of health challenge, and you follow everything the person says, well, if the person is saying 90% accurate information and 10% inaccurate information, your health is going to turn out accordingly, maybe 20, 30, 40 years down the road. From that inaccurate information, your health will start to go downhill at some point. So the reason why you want to learn from multiple sources is you want to keep your fingers crossed and hope that you find conflicting information. Now, that sounds counterintuitive, because people generally, when they bump into conflicting information, they don't like hearing it. They're like,
Mhm.
oh no, it's like, what do I got to do now? I don't know who to believe. Well, no. If you were a researcher, you talk to any researcher, professional researcher, they love conflicting information. They want to find something that could prove them wrong. In other words, if they had said something and said, oh, this is my conclusion, they want to discover if they're wrong, because what's most important to them is not being right, it's it being correct. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah.
I agree, and I've been wrong so many times. And if you're here and you think, you know what, I don't even want to listen to this because I already know about B12, I would just suggest that you listen anyway and just really take in all this information, because I thought I knew what B12 was too when I read that first article. I thought I was supposed to eat meat. So we've all gotten to a point where we've been able to reach outside of our own box and we've said, you know what, okay, maybe I'm wrong now that I'm seeing all the digestive comparative anatomy. I'm supposed to eat this way. And so when we get into our box, though, of how we eat plant based, I feel like we have a new threshold that we can't seem to jump out of, because it's like, okay, that's enough. I already stopped, I already changed my life. But this is really has to do with your health. And if part of why you went vegan is to be as healthy as possible, I could say to you, it's daylight or it's nighttime. And those things are both true here in Maryland at certain points. But that little part that we're missing is, yes, it's daylight until about 5:30 or 6 o'clock now, and then it turns into night. Like that part of the sentence is so important, because if you were just going to fight me on, no, it's always daytime or it's always nighttime, like I think what we want to go over here is that middle of why and I figured too, as a researcher, there has to be a reason that somebody didn't just make up that you could have B12 in your body. Yet I was told for all those years, no, it's a bacteria and it's not in food. And then it's not in your body, it's not made. And it's like it all got so confusing. So I love your presentation because it clears up why people were saying all these different things, but it also adds that little nuance part afterwards as to why it might all be true, but also not the blanket statements that are true.
Right. So the people who write these books and give these talks about how B12 is a scam, they're generally in the supplements are a scam, but and then they're going to focus on B12 especially because it's not even a vitamin. But I've already stipulated that to that it's not a vitamin. It's a microorganism made by bacteria. So where did we get it from 50,000 years ago? Well, I can guarantee you it wasn't from a supplement, because we didn't have any supplements 50,000 years ago. And good thing, because, you know, but we got it from living out in the wild. We're eating directly from the soil. We don't wash anything. There was no sanitation and sanitary conditions like there are today. And so there's some in the soil because it's made by bacteria. We drank from streams and water sources where there was some bacteria in there that had made B12. And so there was some B12 in there. But that's so now we're just talking about the supply side, by the way. There's also the demand side. See, supply and demand, is often attributed to finances. It's also attributed to nutrition. And so far, I'm the only educator that seems to talk about supply and demand as it relates to nutrition. So, our demand for B12 50,000 years ago was a lot lower than it probably is today, because one of the things that just gobbles up B12 is stress. And I'll give you a perfect example of that in a little bit. So the more stress you encounter in your daily life during the course of the week and the month and the year, the more B12 is going to be gobbled up. So our bodies can only make a finite amount of, well, anything. Whatever they make, it can only make a finite amount of it. It can't make an infinite amount. It can't make all you need. The job you have doesn't give you an infinite amount of pay. It only has a specific amount. And if you need more than that, you're in trouble. Um, so when it comes to B12, if our needs today are more than they were 50,000 years ago, that can be a problem. So back then, there was very little stress. As long as you got enough to eat and you didn't get eaten, you were golden, right?
Right. The
The
good
only
old days.
the good old days, the only people who got in trouble were the people who walked by a cave and wondered to themselves, this is before there was language, they wondered to themselves, I wonder what's inside that cave. And then they went in to look and they never came out. But otherwise, if you didn't have that kind of curiosity, you were good. And you got enough B12, obviously. If people back then, let's put it this way, let's use logic. If people back then weren't getting enough B12 to fulfill their body's demands, you and I wouldn't be here today talking. No one would be here today. We wouldn't have anything. We wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't have civilization. It just wouldn't be here. So obviously we had enough because we didn't evolve to require B12. In other words, it's not that we didn't require it back then and we require it today. No, we've always required it in teeny weeny tiny amounts, but we've always required it. So it is an essential nutrient. I refer to it as B12. I don't call it vitamin B12 because then people go, aha, it's not a vitamin.
Right.
Gotcha, Don Bennett. I'm like, okay, you got me. Well, vitamin D is not a vitamin either. So, by the way, why was D and B12 lumped into the category of vitamins? For convenience. Why make two additional categories for those two things that would be the only one in the category? It didn't make any sense. I understood it. It's fine. But let it suffice to say it's a essential nutrient that we need enough of. So our demands may be more today than they were back then. So where do people get it today? Well, if you're eating a diet that's fortified with certain nutrients like B12, well, then that's where you're getting it. Contrary to popular belief, just eating meat, let's say all you ate was a meat diet. In other words, you didn't eat any processed foods that are fortified with anything. So you weren't eating any fortified foods, just meat and animal products and dairy, but nothing fortified with B12. You too can bump up against the B12 deficiency. And I've counseled people who have, because all those things they're eating are cooked. I've never met any mainstream person who eats a lot of animal products that doesn't cook them. They're not
Right.
eating,
They
they're
go
not
out and
eating raw
catch.
meat. They're not drinking raw milk. There are people who do, but that's like 1/10 of 1% of the of the population that eat
About
animal.
the same that are eating vegan.
Well, no, I think there's more vegans than that. Yay, yay. Um,
True.
but cooking B12, the actual B12 after it's made by the bacteria is very heat labeled. It's easily damaged by heat. So cooking to the temperatures that you're recommended to cook chicken and beef to and all this, so you kill. What are they telling you to do that for? To kill the bacteria that could be bad bacteria, right? Well, it also damages the B12. So that's not where you're getting it from. Where most people get it from is the food. It's courtesy of the food fortification program. So iodine was the first thing on that program that was put on that program. Then it was
That was on
B12.
salt.
Oh yeah, they put it into table salt, making it iodized table salt, and that's because about 100 years ago, people started getting a lot of goiter, and they figured out that it was just a lack of enough iodine, so it was ordered to put it into the food supply somehow. Salt was the best thing to marry it with, so that's why iodine was added to salt. B12 has to be put in something that's not going to be cooked. So
Cereal.
they spray it onto cereal as the cereal goes into the box at the packaging plant. So that's where a lot of people get their B12 from fortified foods. And again, it's not a lot that they spray on the cereal, but we don't need a lot. Teeny weeny tiny amount, and our bodies can store it for a while. So if we're getting more than we need, even a little bit more than we need, good. Okay, that's fine. That's perfect. That's the way our body's designed. It stores it. It's like you getting paid in your job and you're getting paid more than you spend. Well, what do you do with the excess? You store it,
Hmm.
right? You don't throw it away. You store it for when you might need it, because it's not coming in because you lost your job, or vacation or whatever. Unpaid vacation. I hate unpaid vacations. Oh boy. Don't get me started on unpaid vacations. But anyway, um, so that's where people got it way back then. And again, always look at supply and demand. Today is different. So today we're living in a very hygienic society. Most of us, at least here in the United States, there's a lot of sanitized stuff that's going on. So the food that you're eating, and even you're told to wash it before you eat it, even if it's already been washed. So wash it to get off any soil. Well, if you'd want some B12, you'd want to eat it with the soil on it, but people are not going to do that, and you don't need to do that, and that's okay. So wash your fruits and vegetables before eating them, but now you're not going to get any B12 from them, from what might be on them from the soil that's still on them. What about our water? Well, our water is so sanitized, you're not going to get any B12 in the water that you're drinking, and you're not going to get it from bottled water. Okay. So, because of what they do to the water to kill bacteria in it, whatever kills bacteria is going to kill, or is going to not kill the B12 because it's not alive, but it's going to damage it in such a way where it's not usable for your body. Um, People say, well, now, wait a second, I'm eating dulse and kelp, from the sea, and I heard that. I looked it up. Don Bennett. They got B12. Yes, they do. It's on there because there's bacteria that make the B12, and it's on there. But if the dulse and the kelp are dried, that drying process damages the B12 in such a respect that it's no longer usable by your body, but it's still picked up by a B12 blood test, which
I
is what.
remember asking you about seaweed when we talked one time, and then you told me it was a roasted seaweed.
Well, yeah, if the seaweed's been dried, it damages the
Hmm.
B12. So I wouldn't count on seaweeds unless they're fresh. Now, women in Japan eating fresh seaweed, they're getting B12, and they're getting iodine also, by the way. That's why, of all the women in the world, the women who have the lowest rates of breast cancer are in Japan, because
Ah,
the Japanese women just eat the most fresh, wet seaweed of any culture on the planet. Okay, yeah, I know. Correlation doesn't equal causation, but you know what? Sometimes it does, and that's what people fail to understand. Anyway, so that's where we were getting it from, and that's where people get it from today. So what happens when you stop eating fortified foods? Okay, so now you can bump up against an iodine deficiency, you can bump up against the B12 deficiency, and people do. I'll share my story in a little bit as part of my slide presentation, but believe me,
there's also a great video we did. Remember a couple of years, was it last year or the year before? It's the nutrients you can get less of on a
oh,
vegan diet. I'll link that here for people. That really opened my eyes to a lot of things like I'm eating healthier than ever. How am I getting less nutrients? But
right.
while you're helping some things, you might not be getting,
Yeah,
all the rest.
we're no longer eating. In other words, who grew our food for us 50,000 years ago? Nature, and we ate from nature, from the wild, and the transit time was zero point 0.1 seconds. You find it, it's ripe, you pick it, you eat it right away. Today, transit time is hours, weeks, sometimes months. Plus, when nature grows food for us, nature isn't saying, well, I'm only going to put two nutrients back in the soil because I'm growing for profit. No, nature doesn't grow for profit, but who does? The agri industry growers today who grow for profit first, and they're not growing for nutritional value. So they're not putting back into their soils anything except potassium and phosphorus. I mean, they're also putting nitrogen back in, those three things, but we don't really need nitrogen, but we do need potassium and phosphorus, but we need the other dozens of nutrients also, which they're not putting back in. So that's just one very quick explanation of why it's possible to get less nutrients today when you go to a raw vegan diet, because nothing in the diet that you're eating is fortified with anything. That's the long and the short of that.
That's it, and it's not saying that we should go back and start eating all these cereals with all these red dyes and things in them, but the point is that, some people say, went on this diet and they told me I'd feel better than I ever did. Well, if they were already coming from a slight deficiency, then they start eating a very clean diet without any of the fortified vitamins that they happen to be getting by mistake. Like, you can't really have a blanket statement. You have to have it so that you're making sure that you're getting enough of all the nutrients, which I know is one of your things, enough of all. It's not that difficult, but you also don't want to be blind to the fact that you might be missing something and just like cut off there after you've done so much work to get your health where it is, because you're eating the healthiest diet really if you're eating high percentage of uncooked, whole, plant-based food. It truly is so healthy. So don't stop there. Take it to that next level and take your health seriously and see that you're getting all the nutrients. That's the way I started to look at it. Even though I wanted it to be easy, Don, I just wanted to say, as long as I eat a banana a day, I'm going to be the healthiest woman in the world. But it didn't, it's not the way it is. So we can still eat simply, but there's a couple of things that we can do. And if you like block your mind off to supplement, period, I just feel like, I mean, we all probably use a blender, and that might be something that is not natural. We all we're on here now using our phone. Obviously, there are some things that we do to accommodate for our life in this modern world. And if it comes to my health getting neurological damage or not, I don't care how many people tell me this side or that side. I'm going to look into it myself. And that's all we're asking you to do is research it, but don't research it from one side or the other. Research it, like you said, as a researcher. Find out why. Every time you hear something, go deeper and ask why. Is even though it's not as easy and convenient, it really could make the difference. Because regardless of this, I also have heard people have neurological damage from B12 deficiencies. So it's not that they weren't eating the perfect diet potentially. They might have been eating the perfect diet, but it wasn't giving them one thing that they needed.
Yeah, people have made certain assumptions, by the way, when they discover a raw vegan diet and they have health issues that the medical industry wasn't able to help them with. So they continue looking. They go down that rabbit hole and they find the raw vegan diet and they stop eating all the cooked food, the grain products, and the meat and the dairy, and they get better. They improve. Their health improves. It's easy to make the assumption that okay, what I'm doing now is it. I found the magic bullet and because I'm improving, it's obvious, and it's definitely not the placebo effect. I mean, I have all this stuff clearing up, and all these things, all my labs are now beautiful. Definitely not the placebo effect. It's the diet. Well, a lot of times it's not what you start doing, but it's what you stop doing that causes the biggest improvement. So you stop eating all that stuff which is burdening the body, very difficult to digest stuff. Now the body has plenty of nervous system energy to do easy digestion of fruits, and the extra nervous system energy that it has left over, it can now direct towards really improved healing, so they get better. But then what I've discovered, and a lot of people that I've counseled, go on that upswing, better health improvement over about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and then all of a sudden, oh, what what's happening there? Why is my health going downhill? I haven't changed a thing, and this isn't like a flu or a cold or something. What's going on here? And if they've been following one person that whole time, and they go to that one person, they say, "I don't understand. What I improved. I'm still following your program to the letter, by the book, literally read the book. Uh, Why is my health going downhill?" They're often told, "Well, I guess you're just not doing everything right
Or detoxing, right?
anymore." Well, no, well, detoxing would have been a long time in the past, but now 7 years down the road, well, you're obviously not doing something right. You've changed something. Maybe you don't realize it. No, this is nonsense. If you're not getting enough of all the nutrients that you require over time, very, very slowly, it's not like a light switch all of a sudden turning off. It's like if you have a dimmer on the wall which controls the light on your ceiling, and you very slowly turn it down over the course of 7 years,
Hmm.
and so the light goes from full brilliance and you've got plenty of energy and get up and go, and now all of a sudden the light's going out over that 7 year period. That's what's happening. By
Like
the
B12, there's a reserve. So,
oh yeah,
if you've
exactly
just
right,
started your vegan diet and you're 3 months in and you haven't taken a B12, it's not likely you have to like run out to the emergency room and get a shot of B12,
right.
but it's definitely worth starting to look into. I think at least learning the information, whether it might be. And I know, do you get into that in your presentation about the testing and everything? I
Mhm.
did want to ask about how some tests aren't even accurate or they're testing the wrong thing, and that's something too that we're going to go deeper in, because I think that's even confusing when people say, no, I took a test and it's okay, but it couldn't, maybe it's not testing the right thing or it's not giving you an accurate reading of what really needs to be tested. So, um, and also, this is so important to put out there, and I'm really happy that we got into this topic today, because it's something that's been very confusing to me too, and I think a lot of people are just tired of being confused by it.
Right, sick and tired of being confused. That's something I hear a lot. Um, okay, so I can get started on the presentation now. I can This is
Yeah, and then if
me
I
full
have
screen.
questions afterwards, I know you said you'll be kind enough to let me ask. I just want to make sure our audience has all the answers that I know everybody's been asking me too over the years.
Right. Okay, there you go. All right, just by way of introduction, I just want people to understand where I'm coming from and everything that you're hearing, where it's coming from. I've been researching health issues for 51 years. Um, I've been vegan for 50 years. I've been teaching about health for 29 years. I've been raw vegan for 24 years. And I've been counseling for 22 years. But it's important to know that I've been researching health issues for over uh, half a century. But what's even more important, I've been researching, not studying. And that's very, very important. And in my research, I do it as a researcher employing what's called the ethos of science. And this is very, very important. It's important for people to understand, hey, when Don Bennett is checking something out, or when he gives when he's not an opinion, but when he says, here's the facts about ABC, what is that coming from? How did he reach that conclusion? I employ the ethos of science, and here are the tenets of the ethos of science: open questioning, no authorities, no biases or personal preferences, an honest desire for the facts, transparency, reliance on evidence, respect for rational and honest discussion, and a desire to peer, which sadly I don't see enough of in my profession, the ability to change your position when the evidence merits it, something else I don't see enough of, an intolerance of distortion and misrepresentation. And anyone who knows me knows I have a huge intolerance of distortion and misrepresentation. Also, a skeptical interrogation of accepted notions. That's very, very important. And last, but I think the most important, is from the Hippocratic Oath that medical doctors take. First, do no harm. Okay, so that's the ethos of science. If you want to look into that more and get a better understanding of what I look to when I'm researching things, just go to my website, health101.org/science. Now, some notions that don't square with reality. The reason why I'm going to go into these is just to point out that some human beings are capable of looking for or wanting reality and being able to recognize it. That's actually more important. They're capable of recognizing reality, and some people aren't, either because they don't like reality. And yes, sometimes reality sucks. I, I understand that. But what I realized a long time ago, I was a teenager. I was 19 years old, and I realized there is a reality. It's impactful on everybody without exception, and there's only one reality. And I think it's in my best interest. This was just my thought at the time. It's probably in my best interest if I understand what the reality of any given subject is, instead of just trying to create these fantasy worlds, which I recognize a lot of adults, non teenagers, made for themselves. Okay, so some notions that don't square with reality, to give as an example. The first one: it isn't known what causes the tides. I don't know if you've ever heard that one. Oh, we don't know. The tides come in, tides come out. We have no idea why. And these are some very, very intelligent people who say this. And I'm like, hmm, I know why the tides come in and out. Well, yeah, you're going to say it has something to do with the moon. Well, yeah, but how many people who know that know how the moon causes the tides? The moon has a gravitational effect on the Earth, and as the moon changes position around the Earth, that gravitational effect literally changes the shape of the Earth a teeny weeny tiny bit. And as the shape of the Earth changes, the water that's on the planet, which is very fluid, that's why they call water a fluid because it's very fluid.
I'm learning something new here again.
Um, so you'll find that when the tides come up in one half of the world, they go down in the other half of the world. That's because the planet is changing shape, and that's what causes the tides. So they're doing this, and the closer the moon is, the greater the tides will be, and that's how it works. So people who say, "Oh, we don't know what causes the tides," that's nonsense. Okay, so it is known. What about the sun revolves around the earth? There was a time when people believed, for various reasons, that the sun revolved around the earth and everything else revolved around the earth. The earth was the center of everything. That's what they believed. Today, we know that's not true for a fact. I mean, it's not an opinion and it's not a theory. It's not like gravitational theory. It's not a theory in that sense. We know that the earth revolves around the sun. But guess what? Today, there are people who still firmly believe, nope, the earth is the center and the sun and all the planets revolve around the earth. Just pointing this out to let you know how out of touch people can be with reality. What's another one? Oh, one of my favorites, the earth is flat. And to point out how it affects people, there were six flat earthers who were trying to figure out how they can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the earth is flat. Because whenever they would give evidence or proof that the earth is flat, the people who believed that the earth was globe shaped would have something to knock it down. They wanted slam dunk evidence to show that couldn't be refuted by the globists that the earth is flat. So they thought and they thought and they thought, and then they said, I know. We'll take recording equipment and a Starlink terminal so we can do it live, and we'll go to Antarctic Circle, the Arctic Circle. Well, which one is it? The Antarctic Circle? No, the Arctic Circle. Yeah, the Arctic Circle. The one up top. I think that's the Arctic
Arctic.
Circle.
I
Yeah,
think so, yeah.
yeah, yeah. The Arctic Circle, and they'll go on the summer solstice, the day of the summer solstice, because if the Earth is flat, the sun will set just like it does on any other day. It'll set and then it'll rise and it'll set and it'll rise. But if what the globists are saying are true, on the summer solstice at the Arctic Circle, the sun will not set at all. It won't set. It'll be nonstop sunlight for 24 hours and beyond. So they say that's it because they were so sure the Earth was flat. So they went there. They got up the
It's
money to
funny.
go, and they went there with their recording equipment. And what they found was, holy crap, it's not setting. And here's the upshot of this. Half of them realized, oh, I guess we were wrong about the earth being flat. That's good. That's good to be able to admit that something you felt was true and correct, you now realize isn't based on, in this case, observation, which is a part of science. The other three people who went said, no, BS. There's something going on here because we know the earth is flat. So how can we figure out what's going on? They were just looking to come up with something to support that which they believed was true. So
Right.
that's the two camps of human beings. Okay, so the Earth is flat. It's not. It's a globe shape. It does change shape with the tides, like I mentioned. And the other thing that doesn't square with the reality is today, no one needs any supplements, including B12. So let's now talk about that. There was a recent rant about me and B12, and it's important to understand about this. And I'm not trying to call out anybody, but those who know me know that in my personal life, if I can't say something nice about somebody, I don't say anything at all. And I was taught this by my grandmother. If you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything at all. Right. Makes perfect sense to me. But in my professional life, no. If someone is disseminating any kind of incorrect information that has the potential to cause harm to people, I'm going to shine a light on it. And I'm going to say, this is what this person is saying. So there was a social media influencer. I don't care for that word, but that's a word nowadays, right? Doesn't matter what I care about it or not. A social media influencer who has a YouTube channel and Instagram channel. And what this person did is, because this person firmly believes we don't need supplements and we certainly don't need B12, um, because of her exposure to this misinformation, which is actually what it is, misinformation, she started interviewing people who share that belief. And when I started seeing this, I'm like, okay, she has enough of a following for there to be injury caused to these people who trust her and believe her. So I said, I got to shine a light on this now. So I wrote a little piece about it. I'll share that link with y'all so y'all have
Yes.
it. You can read it. Um, and I didn't name her name specifically. I didn't say who this person was. I didn't use her name. I didn't even use the name of the people that she was interviewing. I just said, this is what's being said. I figured, let's start with that. That's what's most important. If people don't know the names of the people, it kind of doesn't matter as long as they have the correct information. If they happen to bump into that information from this individual, they'll say, "Oh, this is another one of those individuals teaching incorrect information." Okay, so that's all I really care about, not necessarily naming names, just getting the correct information out there. So I wrote up this piece about it, and somebody in my Facebook group saw it, knew who I was talking about, the interviewer, sent it to her, and then she contacted me and said, "All right, well, here's a book. I just interviewed the author. Here's a book she wrote. It's read this book, then come on my show and we'll talk about it." Now, I'm sure that she thought that after reading this book, I would realize that I was wrong. And I've seen the error of my ways. I'll come on the show and we'll talk about it. But I read the book and I wrote a review on it. And I pointed out the accurate things that the author said, and I pointed out the inaccurate things that the author said. Well, and then I sent her that link to the book review. Well, I think she didn't like that very much because, again, she was of the mind that the stuff in the book was 100% correct. And here I am saying that there's a whole bunch of things that are incorrect and pointing out why they're incorrect, and pointing out the red flags to show that the book is a biased book, which is not good. You don't want to be reading a book that has a bias to it about something that has the potential to affect your health one way or the other. So
Hmm.
she got mad, and then she recorded a rant on Instagram and YouTube, and just, oh my God, I, she used some profanity, some words I never even heard of before. So I got an education on that one. But we, and it, none of that bothered me except when she started saying untrue things about me as if they were established fact, saying things about me that sounded factual but weren't, because that goes against my reputation. And
Hmm.
when you're an educator, your reputation is the only thing you have.
Yes.
So
And
the
that's one of the things I honestly appreciate about your giving us both sides. We know we're getting the real side of the story, and I don't think that I didn't want to believe that I had misinformation, but I also want to ask people to look beyond that when you're listening to people when it comes to very like health information. It's so important that we can all follow, like, this is how I eat, this is what I do, this is how it works out for me. We can only speak from personal experiences. It gets very difficult when you speak from others. And someone sent me that same book that you wrote a review on, and I appreciate that because now I know that's where that individual is getting their information, and it let me know that when I read the first paragraph of the book, while, well, intentions were good, the first paragraph of the book let me know that there was some bias in this because it wasn't completely accurate, where we have to set the stage for what we're talking about. And when we didn't get to the root of, okay, let's talk about what is B12. Any book that I want to read that talks about whether we need something or not. I'd like to all agree on what it is and how it's used in our body. And when I didn't see that in the beginning of the book, that's what threw me off. I'm like, okay, we're going straight into how this could be a scam, but I don't think it's a scam necessarily. I don't think every supplement company is on the up and up. I'm not saying that, but it just, and I will say that that's my thoughts of it. I don't know. I just like to know the real story, and I want our listeners and our viewers. I just realized I wasn't even on the screen. I wanted our listeners and our viewers to have the real story. This isn't about calling anyone wrong or right. It's about the real facts about this so that you all can make an informed decision. And that's why I appreciate your research that you do. And I appreciate you giving us that middle story that no one gives us.
Right. And then the link I'm going to give you in a little while, which is to a page on my website that I put together specifically for this interview, that's going to have the links, and you're going to be able to actually watch that rant if you want to. It's about 3 minutes. Just wear headphones in case there's any little kids around, because oh my God, she was very angry. Now, I get upset at certain things, but I don't get angry like that. Okay. So here's that link. This is the only link you really need to copy down. Is my website slash B12 facts. All
I'll
one,
also link it here in the comments for everyone.
all one phrase, lowercase b. Um, so what happened was, I was this person was telling people that I sell supplements. Now, I don't, and this is not a matter of opinion. In other words, she can't be of the opinion that I sell them, and I can't be of the opinion that I don't. And, there is no right or wrong here. No, this is an objective thing. Either I do or I don't. And I don't. But she, again, assumed that I do because I speak so highly of supplements. And by the way, that's the reason I don't sell them. I could sell them.
I
There's
was
a,
gonna say that's what I've learned about you is that's the reason you don't sell them because you want to make sure that people know you're not saying it so then you can jump into, hey, use my code. And I think that's,
I,
that's
I,
why I think it's very important to, point that out that you're right, that if you do sell something, it does add some type of bias, even though I've recommended products that I really like and had a code for, but it doesn't always mean the case.
right. I just didn't want anyone to have the automatic assumption that I'm speaking so highly of the supplements I speak about because I stand to make money off them.
A
So
big
that's
bottle
why.
of JJ's B12 is gonna pop on the screen any second now. That's what this is all about.
Right,
I'm over
exactly.
here like a mixologist
Yes,
constructing
yes.
B12 bottles.
All right, so that was the first thing that was said in this rant, and it sounded like it was the established fact that I do, but I don't. And anyone who knows me knows I don't. And even if you don't know me and never heard of me before, all you have to do is go to my website. You're not going to find a way to order anything. And where I do offer links to supplements, like I do when I'm on in my Facebook group, you look at the link, it's obvious it's not an affiliate link. And if you need a little bit of education as to what is and isn't, or in other words, ask an AI chatbot, how can I tell if a link is an affiliate link? And the AI chatbot will give you all the different ways of recognizing an affiliate link. But if I tell you go to www.spurty.com, well, that's just the company that sells a Spurty phototherapy device. It's not. It's obviously not an affiliate link. All right. So that was one, that I sell supplements. Another one was I'm a shill for big pharma. Wow, I didn't know this about me. This was a surprise to me. If you read any of my writings on my website that have to do with the things that big pharma does, you would certainly see I am definitely. There's
Farthest
no
from it,
way I'm a
right?
shill for the pharmaceutical industry. I call them out on so many things, but I'm going to explain to you why she thought this. Um, because she says supplement companies are owned by pharmaceutical companies, and this was said as if it was an across the board thing. Okay, supplement companies are owned by the pharmaceutical companies, so you're being screwed. You're being screwed by the pharmaceutical companies when it comes to other things, which I won't mention here because we don't want to get demonetized or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
but
Well, I'm
they
not
also,
monetized, so but I still don't. I maybe one day, right?
um, but so they're also getting you with the supplements. They're also making money from you from those supplements. Here's the problem with that: about 5% of supplement companies are owned by pharma companies. It's only 5%, folks, and that 5% are companies that make things like Centrum, One a Day, Flintstones for kids, and the type of supplements that I would never ever recommend to anybody. So that's why I'm not a shill for the pharmaceutical industry. Um, 95% of supplements, in my opinion, are worthless. Okay. So when you go into a health food store and you see those billions of supplements in the health food in the health and beauty aid section, that's how they stay in business. The markups on supplements are tremendous. That's how they keep the lights on and pay the rent. The markup on fruits and vegetables, it's almost a lost leader for them. They kind of have to sell it because they're a health food store. How can a health food store be a health food store without fruits and vegetables? I don't know. So they sell it. And because they're selling food, so they have to have a produce section. But they don't make any money, any real money off fruits and vegetables, but they make a lot of money off supplements. That's why I can't have a retail store. I can't, I personally could not have a successful health food store, and neither could you in a high traffic area with high rent if the shelf in my store would be this wide, the
Mhm.
supplement shelf. If the supplement shelf was this wide and that's all the supplements I had on it, I'd go out of business in a month. And that's as wide a shelf as I need. That's as wide a shelf as I have here. That's as wide a shelf as anyone needs for nutritional supplements. Okay, so keep that in mind. 95% of supplements are worthless, but 95% is not 100%. Keep that in mind. So the only ones I recommend are B12, iodine, daily green boost, and D. And by the way, I don't recommend D through a pill. I recommend it via a phototherapy device like a Spurdy UVB lamp. I, I, I recommend do not take a pill to get your vitamin D. And there's a lot of reasons because if you notice, see that plus sign after the letter D?
Yes.
You never see that plus sign anywhere when anyone's doing a slide presentation and they put D up there, vitamin D. You never see the plus sign. I'm the only one that sees that plus sign. And that plus sign represents the other equally important nutrients that strong enough sunshine makes in your skin when it shines on it, besides D. And those other nutrients don't come from food because why should they? The way this grand scheme of things is, it doesn't need to come from food because it comes from the sun. Our natural diet doesn't include any vitamin D because we get it from the sun. And we used to get it because 50,000 years ago, there was no such thing as clothing and we got a plenty of strong sun all year round. So all those things come from the sun. So that's why those are the only supplements that most people need to take. There's a few others that might be needed to take temporarily to resolve something. Could be chromium if you're having melon belly. There's kind of there's a few occasions for certain things, but for the most part, that's what most people are going to need.
Thank you.
Let me
That's
just go.
important information
Let
there.
me
But
go
if you
back.
don't have that device, or let's say you haven't gotten one, is it second best to take a D3 supplement?
Well, yeah, I guess technically it's second best, but again,
You're not
those
getting the rest of the Ds.
those well, it's not the rest of them aren't D. The rest of them are other nutrients
Oh, the
that the
plus is other
body.
ones, right.
Yeah, the plus sign just means the other equally important nutrients that sunshine makes in the skin normally. But if you can't get strong enough sunshine all year round, and by the way, anyone who tells you, well, just get plenty of sunshine during the summer and it'll carry you through the winter when the sun is, no, it doesn't. The labs bear that out. No, it doesn't. So that's why nobody should be recommending a,
And
a,
because technically
a
we
D
used to
supplement.
live, we didn't, where we originated, I guess, was had the sunlight year round, or
Oh
had
yeah,
the
absolutely.
that's pretty interesting. And
Yeah.
that's why, if we really look at it, like I said before, if we lived outdoors, no clothes, no houses, no, and all in a tropical environment, we might be able to get away with some of these things that are such blanket statements, but
Well, now
picking our fruit off the tree.
skin tone is also an issue
Mhm.
that people don't think about. But way back when we were living in the cradle of humanity, we basically all where human beings developed, where they were originally, the original location for human beings, because we didn't just simultaneously pop up all around the earth where we are today. We came from a specific place termed the cradle of humanity. All our skin tones were pretty much the same because it was based on where we were living. Now, my skin tone is nothing like the original skin tone of human beings, and neither is JJ's, and neither is a lot of you folks out there. So we have to now deal with things differently. We have a different skin tone. We're living in a different environment, way farther away from the equator. So things have changed. It's not the way they were 50,000 years ago. So we have to do certain things to compensate for that. But fortunately, we can do it. There are phototherapy devices for you to get your D plus.
Mhm. That's amazing. I know. I definitely told you last time I was gonna get one of those, and I haven't yet, so
Oh
don't be
no.
too mad at me.
Well, no,
It's like
it's
you don't care, you don't sell them, right? It's like it's
well,
your
no, it's not.
problem, JJ.
I do care about
I
JJ
know, I
getting
know.
enough of those other nutrients. Um, and if here's the thing, if you take a D supplement and you get your D checked, which is what they check, and you're in range, well, that's great. But if it's from, in other words, I always ask new people who start counseling with me, and they give me, they do D testing and iodine testing and B12 testing, and I look at their D, and it's in range. I always ask them, is it in range now? Well, what is that okay number courtesy of? A D3 supplement or a phototherapy device, or where are you living? Let's see where they're living. Maybe they're living close to the equator. That's very important to know. And if they come back and say, oh, no, I'm living in Canada and that's from a D3 supplement, I'm like, okay, you need to get rid of the D3 oral supplement and get a phototherapy device so that you can have that same good level of D, but also getting those other equally important nutrients that sunshine normally makes. Now I'm ready to tell you about some specifics. Oh, here we're really going to get
Now
into
that
it
we
now.
cleared that up, right?
I'm going to hear about this now. Now, when I started looking into what this social media influencer, who she was interviewing in her supplement, I'll call it an anti supplement series. She called it a supplement series, but it's actually an anti supplement series if you listen to it. She was interviewing all the people who are anti supplement and who say, oh, I've never taken any supplements. So here's someone you might be familiar with. Um, this is Doug Graham, and this is the, what do they call it? The thumbnail from her video. And what's the title of the video? Doug Graham has been raw vegan, no supplements for 35 years. Okay, I can call BS on that because Doug and I go way back. We used to hang a little bit, and I know that Doug has taken a B12 supplement. And if you corner him on it and ask him, he'll admit it. But how does he let himself be in a video with that as a title? That's, well, that's not kosher, to say the least, because it's implying that he's never taken any supplements. But he had to, and maybe still has to, and maybe he'll have to again. Same thing. Interviewed somebody else who says, "Oh, I've never taken any," but I know for a fact he has. He just keeps it quiet because he's very anti-supplement. And then a few other people who say, "Oh, I haven't had to take any." Well, I would add the word "yet" to that, but they don't say the word "yet." They say, "I haven't had to take any." Not yet. You're still young enough where maybe you'll have to at some point.
I was just thinking about something too that you see a lot of raw vegans go so hardcore, all fruit or all raw, and then a couple of years later, you look up that same raw vegan and they've went back to eating meat. And I wonder how many of these things happen because, well, one is they don't ever go into the principle of like what the vegan philosophy, but secondly, I wonder how much is it they're not getting enough of all the nutrients and mistaking it that it's the raw vegan diet when it was actually the right way to go. So I feel like by not getting, if you could take a supplement and stay raw, you would still be
Right.
so much healthier,
Oh,
even if the supplement isn't what you want to do in this natural picture that you have.
there has been a lot of prominent raw vegan educators who were speakers at the Woodstock Fruit Festival and elsewhere they're gone. They're back to eating the diet they used to eat because their health did go downhill. Remember, I described that earlier in our talk today, that you get great benefits in the beginning, but then after a while, your health starts going downhill, and that's why.
Mhm.
Because if you end up believing, which by the way, one of the things Doug Graham says is, once you start eating an all raw fruit and vegetable diet, you don't have to be concerned about your health. This turns out to be incorrect. It's a lovely notion, I will admit. And it was true 50,000 years ago. It's just not true today because of where we're getting our food from. That's the supply side of it. And on the demand side, we may need more magnesium today than we did 50,000 years ago just because of environmental issues and the burdens on our body physiologically. So that's why I lost a lot of respect for Doug Graham because I tried to share, the reasons why we may need supplements, and supplements are a good idea. But there's this thing called old school natural hygiene. Well, it's called natural hygiene, but there's old school version, and then there's a reality based version. I like the reality based version of it, as the name implies. Old school natural hygiene, or we don't need supplements. Yeah, true, because at one time we didn't. But just because we didn't then doesn't mean we don't now. That's the point
Mhm.
I'm trying to make. One more thing about Doug Graham. He was asked, and he's a very prominent raw food educator. He was asked in Q&A after he gave a presentation. And during his presentation, he said, um, things about supplements where we don't need them. And during Q&A, someone asked him, well, so if I think I have a B12 deficiency, are you saying I shouldn't take B12? And his answer was, no, if you think you have a B12 deficiency, of course, take some B12. Does anyone see anything wrong with that statement? Anybody? I don't see any hands going up. What's wrong with that statement is, here's my answer. If someone says, if I think I have a B12 deficiency, should I not take B12 or should I take B12? I would say, no. The first thing you should do is test to verify that you have a B12 deficiency. Because if you don't, and you assume you do, and you start taking B12, it's not going to fix your problems that you're experiencing because in reality, you don't have a B12 deficiency. So don't assume you do because of some self diagnosis or something you read on a chatbot. Test. And there are good tests for it and bad tests. So do a good test for it. And if that test, and I'll get into that in a second, what happened to me recently. And when I tested, I was like, holy crap, couldn't believe what the test was, and I'll explain why. All right, so let's just be done with that. So in other words, I should add, Doug and I teach about 90% of the exact same information, spot on, accurate information. It's that 10% difference that can cause somebody following Doug or somebody following me to have or not have, to not be able to thrive or to be able to thrive, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's look at this now. My B12 story. Okay, ready for this? Now, I've been researching B12 decades. Finally figured out, okay, this is what I got to do. If my body is capable of making it, here's what I'd have to do. Let's run the experiment. Ran the experiment. Now, this has to be over the course of a decade or more because our bodies can store B12. So you don't want that to be a confounding factor and confuse you. So ran the experiment and I say, okay, if I do all the right things, don't drink any alcohol, not a drop, no antibiotics. Hopefully I don't need any. Didn't need any. Great. No antibiotics because they interfere with the body making B12. No garlic. Make sure my diet has enough cobalt in it because cobalt, as we spoke about earlier, is the basis of the cobalamin molecule. And then what else? Oh, stress. Stress gobbles up B12 because you always look at the supply and the demand side. So look at the demand side. You got to keep stress down to a bare minimum, which is a good thing, even if we're not talking about B12, right? Who likes stress? Anybody here? No one's raising their hand. Okay, so everyone agrees with me. The and then what happened? Then I would test MMA, test twice a year, and I still do it twice a year just to make sure. Twice a year, test. It got down to a certain level. MMA is the lower it is, the better. Zero is the best. Zero is the best. And maybe we had zero 50,000 years ago. No one I've tested in the last couple of decades has had zero. But we try to keep that number as low as possible because it is a biomarker of B12 utilization. It is not a measurement of how much B12 is in blood circulation.
Oh,
How
so
much?
it's how much you're absorbing,
Well, how much you're utilizing.
utilizing.
Yeah.
Okay.
If your body, it doesn't matter how much your body is getting or not getting. If it's not utilizing enough, that biomarker, MMA, methylmalonic acid, will start going up. And if it's low, you don't have a B12 problem, guaranteed. But if a B12 test is like in range, you still may have a B12 problem. There are people I've counseled who I said, do the MMA test. And they said, well, what about the B12 test? I said, that's up to you. If you want to spend the money and do it to see how they correlate, I'm not going to ask you to do that. But if you can afford to do it and you're curious as a researcher, which is what you should be, you can look at the correlation. And those people who have done that, there have been some correlated right where the B12 level was very low and the MMA was very high. They correlate. Some people, the B12 level was not low, but it was in the lower end of the okay range, but their MMA was way too high. That shows you that you cannot depend on the standard of care B12 blood test that medical doctors recommend. The gold standard is the MMA test, methylmalonic acid. You ask some doctors to do it. They don't like being told things that they don't know. And
Mhm.
some will look at their list of tests that are available to them. Usually the women will do this. The women doctors will do this. They're like, oh, look at this. I can't order that test. All right. I don't know why women doctors are not as arrogant as men doctors. Might have something to do with testosterone. I'm not sure. Um, but anyway, so get that MMA test done. So uh, recently, so I got it squared away. I'm able to make enough, just no booze, no garlic, no antibiotics. And if I had to do antibiotics, I would take a B12 supplement.
Now, let me ask you a question because this is something that I was shocked when I read on your website, and what I now know, like what, like that's one of those things that was driving me crazy because people are saying like you can make B12, you can utilize it, but who knew that these two things that a lot of us, I mean, not the alcohol thing, but a lot of people do drink it. But let's say in the raw vegan world, like garlic,
Need to do more work on that one.
but garlic actually is something a lot of people wouldn't realize inhibit it.
If you're testing your MMA, regardless of your diet, regardless of what diet you eat, um, typical Western diet, vegan, raw vegan, if you're just doing some basic tests like MMA twice a year, you'll be alerted to the fact if your B12 level is going, going down, if your MMA is going too high. So what happened in my case, like I said, I got it to be about 120. That's good. I'm not going to get it down to zero. What can I say? Who knows why that is? But at least I should tell you the range is zero, like I mentioned. That's the best. And the top of the range is 370. So as long as you're under 370, you're okay. But I'd like to see it, well, I'd love to see it zero, but I'd like to see it at least under the midpoint,
Hmm.
at least under the midpoint of 0 to 370, because then you at least have some buffer in case you get a little stressed and the MMA goes up a little bit. It's not going to go above 370. Okay, so mine was about around 120 consistently every 6 months. Test, 120. I said, all right, I'm able to do it. I've proved that I can. I'm done with my stores from the liver because it's consistent. One
Hmm.
twenty, 120, 120, 120, 120. If it was my stores that I was living off of, because B12 can be stored in the liver, if I was living off my stores, my body's storage, then B12, then the MMA would be going up slowly, 120, 125, 130, 135, 140, 145. And it wasn't doing that. So I'm like,
Right.
to me, that was definitive proof. My body was able to make enough if I did the right thing. How did I get enough cobalt in my diet, by the way, you may ask?
Yes, I
It's
was
not
gonna
from
say.
the foods in the store. It's from Daily Green Boost. Daily Green
Nice.
Boost, that plant is grown in soil, which is going to have cobalt in it. It's I won't get into the in this interview, but
Oh, I
it,
did see that in the ingredients of it. I don't know if I have my
yeah.
bottle.
So the proof was I was getting enough cobalt. My body could build the cobalamin molecule. I wasn't interfering with it, and I kept my stress very low. Supply and demand, everything good. I was good to go. Then I live in a motorhome full time. That's where I am right now. Um, right in back of me there, that's my couch, but I got it covered up. It's a very large walk-in closet, is what it is. But it's a motorhome, and that's where I've lived for 25 years full time. Okay, well, motorhomes are vehicles. They have engines, they have transmissions. The transmission went out, and I had to have it rebuilt. Okay, no problem. Took it to a place. I picked very poorly, but I thought I was picking good. I thought I interviewed the guy really well. I'm a pretty good judge of character, but if you're trying to fool me, you can fool me. Okay, so this place fooled me. For a place that should have, for a job that should have taken 2 weeks, they took 3 months. That's what they ended up taking. And during that time, I was wondering at a few points in time if I was ever going to get my home back. So right now, while they're holding on to it, I have no place to live.
Oh.
I was staying with a friend, but
Mhm.
I was technically homeless. I didn't have my home with me, and it was very very stressful. I can't tell you how stressful it
I
was.
can imagine.
And I was about to get lawyers involved. That made it more stressful. How am I going to pay for the lawyers because they charge an arm and a leg, and I only have two arms. I don't want to get rid of one and one leg. So I was like beside myself.
Is that
And
an opinion or a fact that you have 2 arms and 2
no, that's a
legs?
fact. That's a fact. I'll let you. You'll know when I say an opinion because I'll say in my opinion. Um,
I'm just
so
messing with you.
so what happened is I was so stressed, I didn't have the presence of mind to think, whoa, hang on, all this stress, I have to wonder, could I be depleting my just barely holding its own B12 level? I didn't, that thought didn't occur to me. All I was thinking about is, I want my home back.
Right. And
Uh,
because I think our home is our like
Sanctuary.
our shell, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like our
Yeah.
body in a sense, but just a bigger version. So, yeah, I can imagine
Right.
how stressful I've been in those situations, and it's not fun.
No, no, this definitely
Not
was
the
the,
same with the transmission, but
this was the opposite of fun. Um, so once I got it back, and that was a big relief to actually get it back in my hands. I now have it. They didn't do a good job, but I can deal with that. At least I got it back. I don't have to worry. No lawyers involved. Okay. And I could sit down and just breathe out and take a breath. I started to realize I wasn't feeling well. I said, well, all right, well, let me give it a day. Maybe this is just the aftershock of all that I was just going through with all that stress. Now, during that 3 months, I went to the gym every week like I normally do. I ate the same diet. I wasn't losing my appetite. Everything else was the same. The only difference was boatloads of stress. But I wasn't feeling well. Didn't feel well the next day, didn't feel well the next day. I'm like, no, something's wrong. Something's wrong, and I can't even describe it. But it's not a virus. It's not an infection of any kind. It's not a bacterial infection. It's not exhaustion. What is going on? So I sat and I thought on it, and I said, are you kidding? I betcha I depleted my probably minimal stores of B12. Easy peasy to test. Let me go get an MMA test quick. And I did. Now, I told you what the range was. 0 is the best. 370 is what they say is the top. You don't want to be over that. Guess where I was? And I should say, I've counseled a lot of people, and they come in at 450, 500.
right.
I've had people come in at 850. Wow. We had to get B12 into that person quick. I came in at
Are you
1,143.
kidding me? After being on range because of that stress. And geez, a whiz.
Right. So I was
Like,
maintaining it just probably barely amount. My body was barely able to make enough B12. So I kept my MMA down low and kept it there. So that's great. That's what you want. But it just goes to show you if you're under stress, and I don't mean for 10 minutes, somebody cuts you off on the highway. That's not, that'll use a little bit of B12 right then and there, but you're not going to be, you know, stressed about it for the rest of the day or the week. Nothing
right.
happened. He just cut you off. Oh well, you're over it. At least I am. Some people will talk about it for the rest of the day.
Or their
Um,
life.
right. Yeah. So just that, so that amount of stress depleted my B12 enough. So my MMA just went through the roof, literally through the roof. So I said, okay, this explains my symptoms. This explains the cognitive issues. Because those are easy to, to see. If you're starting to have cognitive issues, you recognize that.
Yeah.
You notice that. So I noticed that. I noticed energy levels, but not just from physical work exhaustion. There was none of that. So there was just a bunch of things. And now I realize, yes, of course, it was a B12 deficiency. So I went out and got B12, took it, retested MMA 2 weeks later, came down to 240, which is now under 370. So that's good. And then
Nice.
kept taking the B12 and got it back down to around 120 again.
That's
Um,
amazing. So
yeah, all
glad
right.
you're okay.
So that's now. Fortunately, I caught it in time, so there was no permanent neurological damage. That's the bad thing about having a long-standing B12 issue. A friend of mine, Lawrence, this was like 30 years ago, when I first started learning about this stuff, and I learned about B12, and he had some symptoms, and little bit of shaking, little bit of quivering, not that much. I'm over exaggerating there a little bit, but I said, I think you might have a B12 deficiency. But Lawrence was one of these people who
Mhm.
said, no, I don't need any supplements. We don't need supplements. Don, I keep telling you that. I said, oh, I'm not arguing with you. You may be right. I didn't know at the time. This was a long time ago. It could be 40 years by now. 45 years, actually, Lawrence. Anyway, so long story short, he had to go to the emergency room, B12 tested. He had almost non existent B12. That's what was causing his neurological issues where he's shaking. So they gave him B12 shots, got his B12 up, but then he continued to have the neurological damage. Just getting the shots brings your B12 level up. It doesn't heal the injury, the neurological damage that was done. It doesn't heal that. Could a human body heal from that? It's not a normal, natural condition to have. So I don't know. It didn't with him. So that's what you want to avoid. That's the problem with the deficiency of B12 is
Well, I'm glad I
irreversible
went to Google when
neurological
I
damage.
started getting those tingly
Oh yeah,
arms and
yeah,
never know what it was, but I didn't go get tested, but I just started taking the supplement, so I
right,
guess I erred on the side of caution there, but
right.
I haven't had any problems since. So I did
What?
just
Yeah.
lose a bunch of weight.
Mm.
So, like people that want to believe that we don't need supplements could probably give me 1,000 reasons, but I was not. Now knowing, I actually watched an interview on a different channel. There was a guy who has permanent damage, and he's very forthcoming about it, and you can hear it, like, sometimes cognitively even, he
Well,
said.
in my Facebook group, I posted something about this whole issue. I think the title of my post was "This B12 issue is getting serious and not a hand" or something like that. And I mentioned just very briefly in a short paragraph what was going on, and I just put it out there. And I said I'm going to be doing this interview today, in fact. So now I'm going to go back and post a link to this interview once I get it from you. But people are coming in there now saying I was damaged by B12. I had a B12 deficiency, and I asked them. I said, "Well, what made you think you had a B12 deficiency? If you don't mind me asking, if you don't mind saying." And they came back and they described exactly what it's textbook. So it does happen. So anyone who says, no, no, it's all nonsense and we don't need it, you get plenty, whatever, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and you do not want irreversible neurological damage. You don't even want reversible neurological damage, right? Let's be honest about it.
Right, we don't want any neurological
There's,
damage. It's
there's no
already
reason for it.
we're so, I it's funny because you were talking about, like, getting cut off in traffic or something, like, was stressing you out, and it's like that's called getting on your nerves, right? Like, it
Right,
is really
right.
neurological. It's blocking your nerves, like, so I think, we don't think of how that all ties together, and, like, stress, I didn't even put all that together when I was thinking of living in the modern world. I was actually, oddly enough, at that time where I was telling you, I was also moving out of a place I was at 7 years that they sold, and we had to move, so that was also a stressful time. So I'm wondering if it just took a dip based on that too, because I
Oh
was
yeah.
okay for a couple of, like 4 months. I probably had reserves, and I don't know if that was what it was, but it was very strange. And I'm very blessed that my arm gave me that notification, and legs were tingling a little, because if not, I would have still probably never looked it up. I could be here, with neurological damage. And that's the name of this page was created because of vegan knowledge, and the knowledge is what I really want to bring to people, and that's why this was so important, because I know how seriously you felt about the issue of doing the least harm. And I don't think people are trying to do harm, they believe what they believe, but in not getting to the real facts, sometimes we are inadvertently could be causing harm to people. And I want to make sure if you're watching this channel, you are getting both sides of the story and the real side,
Right,
basically, or not even both sides, but the real side. Like
right,
that's what I wanted. I just wanted in the beginning take them through where I was, because I was the same way. I was like, okay, I'm having this tingling. I'm hearing you can get neurological damage. I better take a B12 supplement. And then to turn around and hear somebody else saying you don't need it, if I had stopped taking it and just gotten really involved in that without researching further, I may have never came back around to the whole truth. So that's all that our main message is, to just don't take it lightly, because it's not something, especially B12. I think all of them, the three that you mention a lot, iodine, um, D, and B12 are all serious. But I think when it comes, like in my mind anyway, I could be wrong, that can cause a really serious irreversible issue.
right, right, absolutely. And I also want to say, I mean, I've been speaking about this social media influencer who is posting all these things about we don't need any supplement, we don't need B12, it's a scam, blah blah blah, and then went on a rant about me. Um,
I'm
I'm
sorry that
re
happened.
well, it happens, but I'm just saying.
I didn't mean to do. I'm just kidding. It wasn't me, guys.
um, I'm reasonably sure she has a good heart, and I'm reasonably
Hmm.
sure she cares about people just like I do. I have a good heart. I care about people. Where we differ is some people are more easily convinced of certain conspiracies out there, and believe me, there are conspiracies out there. But some conspiracies that people talk about are not conspiracies. No one's conspiring to fool us into believing the Earth is flat because what all the airline pilots and the flight attendants and the air traffic controllers and the companies that make the maps, they're all in on the conspiracy. That would all have to be true for that to be, a thing. And I, some people just easily believe things like that. I don't. I'm very skeptical, and like I said before, it's good to have a skeptical interrogation of the accepted notions. So let me just finish up with the recommendations. I'm almost done. Just a few slides left. Let me
Let me
do
get you
this.
back on the big screen.
All right. All right, so some recommendations. Don't, like I said before, don't follow one educator. Multi source education is best because you want to find that conflicting information. And when you find it, be happy. Be like a researcher. Be happy because they're like, yes, conflicting information. Now I can see, is what I was saying true or is this conflicting information true? Which is it? Because I want to get at the truth. And so be a researcher and not a student. These are the three books I've written. I have them in paperback and ebook, but all people viewing this podcast can have a complimentary ebook version of all three books. Just I'll tell you how to do it in a second. You just basically contact me through my website and say, I saw you on JJ's podcast. I'd like free copies of those ebooks. I would give you free copies of the paperbacks. I just can't afford to do that financially. Um, let's see. So I also do counseling, and the counseling that is of most worth and the most bang for the buck also is the problematic nutrient testing and evaluation counseling, which covers D, B12, and iodine. And I should say that you don't need counseling to get your D and B12 assessed and corrected. You can do that yourself. Anybody can. If you can read English, you can just read my articles on how to self assess and self correct D and B12. I tried to write one for iodine, I just couldn't. It's too complicated. So that's why I initially created the counseling service for iodine, just for iodine, because it was so complicated and it's so easy to go wrong and get hurt, harmed by it. So I said, you know what, let me just throw the D and B12 in there, make it part of the counseling. And that way people don't have to do the counseling for iodine and read all my, the big articles that I've written about D and B12, just put it all in one thing. So I recommend everybody do this, get the problematic nutrient testing done. I wish other educators offered this, other practitioners offered this. I have not found anyone who does this. I hate being the only one doing this. I hate being the only one putting a plus sign after the letter D. I'm not sure why. I'm trying to change that slowly but surely, but there's just I don't know a lot of resistance out there. Okay, so um, This is the Facebook group I have. I think it's the biggest raw vegan Facebook group. I think it's got over 11,000 members now. Uh,
It's
I'd like,
a wealth of information.
I'd
I
like to
love it
say,
there. I use it like Google.
yeah. So I guess when you speak the truth and you shine the light on the misinformation and disinformation, like from certain industries, people just say, okay, yeah, that's the place to go to. Um, so that's the Facebook group.
Oops, let me get you back
Here's
up.
This is the page I said before that I made specifically for this interview. So when you go there, this is what you're going to see, and there's a few more things down below it, and it's going to give you read those four things on the B12 issue.
I think the B12 story, is that what one of them is called?
That's the bottom one.
That's the one that I read, and it cleared a lot of things up for me. So if you read that in addition to the others in this interview, it's so eye-opening. It's like if you've been like me confused for all these years, it'll really, put all the facts out there to you. And what it did for me was cleared up why I was hearing all these different stories. It made sense. There was a little bit of truth in all of them, but that little part after it is what was missing. You make it, don't worry about it. But what if I ate garlic yesterday, right? Like, so that part where gets there instead of a constant debate. We've done a lot of these interviews that I feel are so important for raw vegans, which I'll link here for everyone too. We did like a series, and I wanted to do the one on B12, I remember, and then something happened. Maybe that's when things started happening where you had to take care of your vehicle, or I started would get a different job, and like we just never finished that, and we never got back to each other. And I'm like, so I'm glad we were able to circle back around to it.
Right. And it's especially helpful not just to read those four links there about B12 that I have on that page, because you get the facts about B12, but it's also important to know the misinformation that's being taught about it and who's teaching it, sadly, because
Hmm.
hopefully, see, it's very important for a researcher or for an educator, actually, to be teachable. Very important for an educator to be teachable. And I'm certainly teachable. If anyone tells me I'm teaching something that it turns out to be incorrect, I want to know about it so I can
Same.
correct it.
And I will always, use and reference your information, even if I'm doing something a little bit off. Like, I don't think we want to hear some things that are truth, right? Like, life would be so much easier if these things were cut and dry. Like, if you could just tell me, like, you don't need it, or yes, you need it. It's not that simple. There's a
Right.
lot
Well,
involved.
that's why I've always said I'd love to believe that I don't need to take any nutritional supplements. I'd love to believe that I can eat cooked food. I don't know that I would eat animal food, but I'd love to believe I can eat cooked food. It would make things a lot easier in social settings with friends and family. But I can't believe in those things because I know they're not true.
You know the difference, right?
Yeah,
You know
absolutely.
too much, Don.
So I'll leave you with this one thought, which is what I hope that that particular influencer hears and can take to heart is what can do you the most harm is what you know that just ain't so.
I love that. And I think on this community, I would just love for everything to, like you said, for all of us to have the information and be able to get along and not, really combat each other, because we all are a united force that we know this information that not a lot of people know. We're already battling the rest of the whole
Right.
world of meat, dairy, pharma, all of it. So, like in this raw vegan community and in the vegan community, it would be so nice to have just a blanket set of information that we could all agree to that's fact. So, I thank you for coming on and for sharing everything that you've shared. Thank you for your articles, your website, and your everyone go join the Facebook page. I'll see you there in a little while. I'm sure I'll be chiming in to Facebook, and I'll get this video over to you. And that way we can put it on your page to give people the real story on B12.
All right, great. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for everything you do.
Bye.
Bye.